Good morning. I am Dr. Anil, Assistant Professor in Department of General Surgery, Sri Lakshmi Narayana Institute of Medical Sciences, Pondicherry. Today, the topic of discussion is fistula in ano and fissure in ano. First, we'll go into fistula in ano. So, what is a fistula in ano? So, anal fistula, it represents a communication between an internal opening in the anal canal and an external opening through which an abscess has drained. So anal sepsis or abscess, it represents the acute manifestation, and anal fistula, it represents the chronic form of suppurative process. Sometimes a fistula and an abscess may coexist or be associated with atypical internal openings and multiple tracts that result in a complex suppurative process. So what are the causes? What is the etiology of fistula in ano? There are many causes like malignancy, trauma to the perianal region, tuberculosis, foreign bodies, actinomycosis, leukemia, postoperative infection, inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's disease, and simple skin infections that have long been associated with anal sepsis. And recently, an association between anal abscess and fistula and an history of concurrent or recent cigarette smoking has also been demonstrated. So fistula in ano can develop in approximately 40% of the patients during the acute phase of sepsis, or even be discovered within 6 months of initial therapy. Fistulas are categorized by the Parkes classification. So we have the Parkes 4 main subgroups according to the course taken by the main tract. So they are intersphincteric fistula in ano. Second one is transsphincteric fistula in ano. Third one is suprasphincteric fistula in ano. And the fourth one is extrasphincteric fistula in ano. And each category can further be subclassified based on the associated secondary tracts and other anatomical details also. So here we have a diagram showing the basic anatomy of the perianal region. So surrounding the anal canal, we have the internal and external anal sphincters. So and the levator ani and the puborectalis muscles. So we have the various spaces in between these muscles. So we have a perianal space. We have intersphincteric space between the internal and external sphincter. We have a sacrorectal space. We have a submucosal space and the supralevator space. So this picture is showing the 4 different fistula in ano as described by Parkes classification. So the type 1 is a intersphincteric type. So here the external opening, from the external opening, the fistulous tract goes in between the internal sphincter and the external sphincter, and then traverses the internal sphincter and opens into the anal canal. So this is the most common type of fistula in ano, as seen in 45% of fistula cases. Then we have type 2, which is the transsphincteric fistula in ano. Here the fistula tract, it pierces the external sphincter, goes into the internal, goes through the intersphincteric space, then pierces the internal sphincter and then opens into the anal canal. This is the second most common type of fistula in ano. Then we have type 3, that is the suprasphincteric fistula in ano. Here the fistula tract goes above the external sphincter, then comes into the intersphincteric space, traverses down, and then pierces the internal sphincter, and then opens into the anal canal. Then we have the least common type, which is the extrasphincteric or type 4 fistula in ano. So this fistula tract, they pass above this external sphincter and the levator ani muscles, and then it opens into the rectum. Most of the patients with fistula in ano, they have a previous history of anorectal suppuration. So the patient usually presents with complaints of intermittent or persistent purulent or serosanguinous drainage from an external opening in the perianal area. The symptoms classically consist of a buildup of pain, slight fever, and pain on defecation, followed by a mucopurulent drainage and then abatement of the pain. So the pruritic symptoms may be associated because of the skin irritation due to the chronic discharge. So the external opening is identified as a small pit surrounded by a scar or granulation tissue on inspection of the perianal region. So there may be active seropurulent drainage which is associated or which is coming from the external opening. Usually the intersphincteric tracts, they open externally close to the anal verge, but whereas the transsphincteric and other complicated tracts, they open farther away from the anal verge. And occasionally this external opening may be localized inside the anal canal or at the distal end of a fissure. Sometimes several external openings may be present because of multiple complex fissular tracts, and this condition is known as watering can perineum. So the internal opening can also be identified on parrectal examination, which is felt as an indurated nodule and most oftenly seen at the dentate line or felt at the dentate line. So there is one rule called the Goodsall's rule, which can identify the internal openings. So this rule states that when you draw an imaginary line along the anal traversing the midpoint of the anal canal or the anal verge, so you divide the perianal region into anterior and posterior regions. So all the external openings which are seen anteriorly, so their internal openings, they are seen exactly at the end of the radial line drawn from the external opening. Whereas the posterior external openings, they follow a curvilinear route and open exactly at the posterior midline. But there are some exceptions to this rule. For example, the anterior fistula external openings, which are more than 3 centimeters from the anal verge, they also follow a curvilinear route and open into the posterior midline. So the same thing, the Goodsall rule, it is helpful in locating the internal opening. So this rule states that an external opening anterior to an imaginary transverse anal line in the coronal plane most likely communicates with an internal opening lying at the end of a radial line drawn to the nearest crypt at the dentate. If the external opening is posterior to this line, the internal opening will most likely be located in the posterior midline with the tract following a curved route to reach its source. So exceptions to this rule include the anterior openings more than 3 centimeters from the anal verge, and the presence of multiple external openings. In these cases, the internal openings most likely will open in the posterior midline. So going to the investigations that needed to be performed. So first is the sigmoidoscopy. Should be performed in almost all the patients with anorectal fistulas. So the presence of associated pathology such as neoplasms, inflammatory bowel disease, or associated secondary tracts in the rectum can be seen while doing a sigmoidoscopy or a colonoscopy. Then fistulography. So fistulography is warranted in patients who are having recurrent fistula in ano and when a prior procedure has failed to identify the internal openings. In this technique, so first the external opening is cannulated with a small caliber tube and contrast material is injected under minimal pressure while the films are being taken in several projections. So this fistulography is useful in identifying unsuspected pathology. So the planning surgical management and demonstrating anatomical relationships. Then we have anorectal ultrasonography. So this can delineate the muscular anatomy of the anal sphincters in relation to the abscess or a fistula. So the fistula tracts and abscess, they appear as hypoechoic defects within the muscular elements of the anal cavity. So usually the internal opening is not distinctly identified in anorectal ultrasonography. So although generally this is accurate in localization of the abscess and fistula tracts, sometimes the primary superficial extrasphincteric and the suprasphincteric tracts or secondary supralevator or infralevator tracts, sometimes they may be missed. And recently, this three-dimensional endo-anal ultrasonography has evolved. This is now more reliable and accurate in the diagnosis of fistula in anal. Then we have magnetic resonance imaging. So MRI, this is another accurate method of imaging anal fistula. 5 to 15% of complex fistulas are often associated with recurrent fistulas and most of the times they are associated with the underlying Crohn's disease. So MRI is shown to be helpful, especially in these complex fistulas, in identifying the fistulous tract, identifying the secondary extensions, and also in identifying the internal openings. So the sensitivity and specificity of MRI is 100% and 86% respectively, and respectively in identifying the fistula tracts. So it is MRI is especially useful in evaluation of these complex fistula tracts. Then we have computed tomography. So the role of CT in anal sepsis and fistula is limited. So this is especially or very this is used to assess the if there is some to assess associated pelvic pathology such as in supralevator abscess and in patients with some complex anal fistulas. Otherwise, there is no role of CT in anal sepsis. Then we have anorectal manometry. So manometry can assist in identifying patients at greatest risk for postoperative incontinence. So with the help of this anorectal manometry, surgical management can be tailored accordingly. That is by improving the clinical and functional outcome. That is by preserving the sphincter mechanism. So the selective use of anorectal manometry is especially warranted in patients with or when a suspected sphincter impairment is there, or suspected of needing substantial proportions of the external sphincter to be divided for fistula care, and, uh, and women with a history of multiparity, previous forceps delivery, third degree perineal tear, high birth weight, or prolonged second stage of labor. So anorectal fistulas, they rarely heal spontaneously. So, untreated patients, they frequently develop chronic abscess formation and complex fistula tracts. So the goals of treatment for anal fistula include to cure the disease, to prevent its recurrence, and to preserve the continence. So the goals are to cure the disease, prevent its recurrence, and then preserve the continence, which is more important. So treatment, adequate and appropriate treatment is mainly dependent on first the correct classification of the fistula, whether it is a transsphincteric fistula, intersphincteric fistula, suprasphincteric or an extrasphincteric. Then identification of the internal and external openings. Then the course of the tract need to be identified, and then the amount of the sphincter muscle that has been involved, that also have to be identified. So surgical treatment, it remains the primary modality of treatment for non-inflammatory bowel disease related fistulas. So there are many techniques. So these are the various techniques for management of fistula in ano. So we have first the fistulotomy, then set-on placement, so a draining set-on or a cutting set-on. So then a fibrin glue injection, fistula plug application, endorectal advancement flap, ligation of intersphincteric fistula tract. So going to fistulotomy. So most of the anorectal fistulas can adequately be treated by this classic fistulotomy, which is nothing but just laying open. So the recurrent rates are low and the risks of continence disturbance are also minimal. So in fistulotomy, we first pass a fistula probe via the external opening and go along the tract and come out through the internal. So with the probe in place, the relationship of the fistula tract to the external sphincter muscle can be determined. Then if the tract implies to majority of the external muscle, then cautery is used and the tract is laid open. Tract, they should be drained through the fistulotomy incision after all the tracts have been cured. And marsupialization with running continuous absorbable suture can be done, and this is associated with a faster healing rates. So fistulotomy, it is the mainstay of treatment for intersphincteric and low transsphincteric fistulas. Sometimes in women with anterior fistulas, they have a high risk of incontinence because of the intrinsic thin nature of the sphincter mechanism in this area. Therefore, this fistulotomy should not be done in women with anterior fistula. Sphincter preserving techniques should be used in the treatment of all the most anterior fistulas in women. This is one contraindication, or this is one condition where fistulotomy should not be done. So in intersphincteric and low transsphincteric fistulas, fistulotomy is the mainstay of treatment. Then set-on placement. So it is nothing but a foreign material that can be inserted into the fistula tract to encircle the sphincter muscles. So the materials that can be included are silk, Penrose drains, Cialistic vessel loops, bands, nylon or polypropylene, and braided steel wires. So these are the silk, Penrose trains, sialistic vessel loops, rubber bands, nylon or polypropylene, and braided steel wire. Setons are placed by securing the selected material to the end of the fistula probe. The probe has been passed through the internal opening. So complete healing of selected aneurysm with the use of these long-term setons. So they can be used for four different things, that is so marking seton is useful when it is difficult to determine the amount of muscle the fistula tract crosses. So encircling the tract with a seton allows the surgeon to assess the amount of muscle, particularly the puborectalis. And if adequate muscle is present above the fistula tract, the fistulotomy may be performed without any significant risk for incontinence. Then we have a draining seton. So it traverses the fistula tract to provide a long-term drainage of the septic process. So it may be used as a bridge to definitive surgical therapy, or it can be left in place for longer periods. Then epithelialization of the tract, which occurs, it prevents the formation of recurrent abscess. The long-term draining setons are usually tied loosely, and they are particularly useful in management of complex fistulas associated with Crohn's disease. Sometimes, and recently we have a combination of, we are getting combinations of a draining seton and immunomodulation therapy with infliximab. So these setons appears to improve the outcomes while maintaining the sphincter function in Crohn's patients, especially with complex anal fistulas. Then we have a cutting seton, so which is used to gradually transect the striated sphincter muscle. So this technique promotes fibrosis in the tissue surrounding the muscle encircled by the seton. So by definition, the skin or the muscle must be incised in the tract of the seton to allow the skin to heal over the seton. So at 2-week regular intervals, the seton is progressively tightened, so dividing the muscle by a process of ischemic necrosis. So the cuttage of the divided muscles, it separates minimally because of the fibrosis that forms during the time it takes to divide the muscle. Then a staging seton. So it is placed through the portion of the fistula tract that traverses the sphincter, thus encircling the muscle. This portion of the tract is divided as a second procedure after adequate fibrosis occurs. This is done usually after 8 weeks. So with this technique, a high fistula can be converted to a low fistula. So by dividing only the proximal portion of the tract. So leaving the distal tract encircled with the seton for division at a later date. So another picture, so showing how a fistula probe is put and how a seton is placed. So from the external opening, the probe is passed through, and the probe comes out into the anal canal through the internal opening. Then the seton is tied to the other procedure is fibrin glue injection. So a fibrin glue is nothing but a prepared mixture of fibrinogen and thrombin. and this is injected into the fistula tract after it has been curated. So the resulting coagulum plugs the fistula tract. So this technique, it represents an alternative mode of treatment, especially in cases in complex cases where the standard treatment has failed. So despite mixed results, fibrin glue, it remains the viable treatment option because of its safety, ease of application, and low risk of sphincter injury. Then we have a fistula plug. So an anal fistula plug is a placed in the fistula tract and which acts as a scaffolding for the native tissue involved. The advantages of anal fistula plugs are it is inherently resistant to infection. It produces no foreign body or chain cell reaction, and this becomes repopulated with the host cell tissue for a period of 3 months. So the fistula plug is inserted into the primary opening of the fistula and secured into place with 1 or 2 interrupted stitches. So currently the commercially available anal fistula plugs are either made of lyophilized porcine or synthetic absorbent. This intervention appears to be a safe option because it preserves the anal function, first of all, and it is associated with a low morbidity, and the patient has it has a high patient tolerance. Then we have endorectal advancement flaps. So endorectal advancement flaps, they consist of a mucosa, a submucosa, and part of the internal sphincter. So the underlying fistula tract is debrided and the internal opening is sutured at the level of the muscle. So the edge of the elevated flap containing the internal opening is excised and the flap is advanced and sutured over the internal defect. Underlying fistula tract is and the internal opening is sutured at the level of the muscle. The edge of the flap is elevated and the internal opening is excised and the flap is advanced and sutured over to the So the advantages of endorectal advancement flaps are it is a one-stage procedure. It offers quicker healing. There is limited damage to the underlying sphincter, and there is a minimal risk of anal canal deformity. So several studies have reported good success with this technique, and very few complications are expected, especially in flap, and with very few complications of anorectal advancement flaps are expected. The chances of this flap failure are higher, especially in cases with Crohn's disease, those who are smoking, who have prior multiple surgeries, and also and the patients who have got a concurrent use of fibrin glue injection. Then we have ligation of intersphincteric fistula tract. So this sphincter preserving method for fistula closure, it involves making an incision in the intersphincteric groove. Dissection is done between the sphincter muscles and the fistula tract is identified. Fistula probe is left in situ during this time. Then the fistula tract is then dissected free and the probe is removed. Next, the fistula tract is divided and ligated. The internal opening is closed with absorbable sutures and the external opening is curated and left open to drain. So failure of lift procedure has been classified into type 1, 2 and 3. Type 1 is residual sinus tract from interstate. Type 2 is downstage tract from interstate to internal opening. And type 3 is with complete failure that extends from previous internal opening to one or more external openings. So type 1 failure is treated with local curettage and antibiotics. Type 2 failure is treated with fistulotomy, and type 3 failure is treated with a secondary repair using other modalities, or a repeated lift can be done. Post-operative care, we give high fiber diet, sitz baths are given, pain management with analgesics, and wound care to be followed. The complications, the urinary retention is the most common complications. So the other complications are hemorrhage, acute external thrombosed hemorrhoids, cellulitis, fecal impaction, stricture, rectovaginal fistula formation, incontinence, and recurrence. So the emerging technologies for fistula repair are FILAC, that is laser emitted by a radial fiber, and video assisted anal fistula. So this is about fistula in ano, and then we go to fissure in ano. So an anal fissure is a linear ulcer usually found in the mid. These lesions are typically easily seen by visual inspection, and the location they may vary. So most fissures are identified in the posterior midline, and anterior midline fissures are more common than the lateral fissures. So sometimes a sentinel tag at the distal portion of the fissure and a hypertrophied anal papilla proximal to the fissure can also be seen. So fissures occurring in the lateral portion should raise a possibility of other associated disease such as Crohn's disease, tuberculosis, syphilis, HIV, and carcinoma. So most often they present with excruciating anal pain with while defecating and bleeding while defecation. The patient typically describe a preceding episode of constipation. So anoscopic examination will also cause severe pain. Sometimes it may not be necessary. So the pathogenesis is multifactorial. So the passage of large and hard stools, low fiber diet, previous anal surgery, trauma, and infection, they may be the contributing factors. So the increased resting anal pressures and reduced anal blood flow in the posterior midline, these have been postulated to be the reasons for or most common the fissures to be seen in the posterior midline. So most of the medical therapies, they are directed to achieve the goals of relaxation of the anal sphincter. The pharmacological agents that have been considered are the topical nitric oxide, calcium channel blockers, and botulinum toxin injections. And non-surgical therapy is safe, and because of its limited side effects. So on either sides of the internal anal sphincter, usually 20 units of botulinum toxin. So this relaxes the internal anal sphincter, and this also is believed to promote the blood flow of the aorta. So surgical management, the most commonly performed surgery is lateral internal sphincterotomy, which can be done closed or open technique, and fissurectomy can also be done. So this is one picture showing how the lateral internal sphincterotomy is performed. So after the incision, I go into the intersphincteric groove, identify the internal sphincter, and then divide it. Fissurectomy can also be done in chronic fissure in ano patients. So this is the flow chart showing the management in brief. So first identify whether it is midline or lateral. If it is lateral, consider evaluating for Crohn's, TB, syphilis, and HIV. So midline non-operative treatment, we have nitrates and calcium channel blockers, or botulinum toxin injections. Operative treatment, we have lateral internal sphincterotomy. If it fails, we do examination under anesthesia, then consider for biopsy and evaluation of the sphincter. In hypotonic sphincter, we consider for fissurectomy with advancement flap